Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I have a little review of most of Nailpollies Freshly Picked collection. You might remember me sharing a couple of Nailpollies reviews in the past, but they did close down their shop for a couple of months sometime late last year. But as you can see, they are back with a new rebranded look. Nailpollies is a small indie brand based in Southern California, and they started out their brand by having these hand sculpted caps that were usually food or just like other kind of items inspired by the collection theme, but that kind of became unsustainable. So the new caps feature a regular nail polish cap with a little hand sculpted fruit charm on top of it. I was super excited to see them come back. So for the rebrand launch, I picked up 3 of the nail polishes and 1 cuticle oil, but Danielle was super kind enough to include 2 of the other polishes in my package. So I'll share more of my thoughts for these at the end of the video after comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first polish I picked up is Berry Adorable, which is a sweet strawberry jelly filled with red and gold microflakes, and of course it has a tiny little strawberry on the cap. This definitely has a sheer jelly sort of formula, offering a pretty light wash of color on the first coat, but it was really even and easy to apply. I think it built up pretty nicely in 2 coats, but I did end up doing a third for my live swatch portion just to deepen the color a bit more and see how much more coverage I would get, because it was a little bit more sheer than I was expecting, which is going to be a theme for this video. And no surprise, I really preferred the third coat just because it also intensified the color, which I also liked a lot more. It initially was picking up a little bit more orangey coral, not quite as red as I was expecting, but it does still have this strawberry jam kind of vibe. And for my full hand swatch, I just did 2 coats with a glossy top coat, so you can see in direct sun that my visible nail line is fully visible. Apologies, I forgot to swatch these under a blurring base, but yeah, I would probably recommend that if you aren't crazy about how this looks on its own, but this is passable for me, pretty much in line with what I expect from jellies, but I would probably do a third coat. Next up, I grabbed Blue-tiful Just the Way You Are, which is described as a blueberry purple jelly with a cute little blueberry on top. I absolutely adore how tiny this is. It is seriously so cute. For the polish itself though, this again was really sheer, where the first coat is barely giving a wash of color. So it honestly reminded me more of like a color correcting type of nail treatment. I know that might not be for everyone, but I did like how it brightened up my nails on just the 1 coat. Doing a second coat does build up that really soft purple color, emphasis on soft. It is very pastel, very white based, almost having that gray or I guess blue undertone. So if you want even more color, I would definitely recommend doing a third coat, but of course, since it's a jelly, it's not going to build up in coverage at all. Even though the color does have a slight milkiness to it, it's not quite the same as other milky jellies, for example, that sort of obscure the nail line, because as you can see again for my full hand swatch, just doing the 2 coats, my nail line is not hidden or obscured at all. It just looks a little bit brighter because of the color. I have some mixed feelings about this one, where thinking of it as a jelly polish, it's not super impressive because it is incredibly sheer, but I like how it looks on my nails at the same time. The last polish that I grabbed was Zest in Show, which is a pale yellow inspired by freshly squeezed lemons, and it has a little half-cut lemon on top. The detail is so impressive, but as far as the polish goes, this is pretty much the same as the last polish, where because it's more sheer, it kind of reads as a color corrector to me, which I know is strange considering this is a pale yellow, but it's just so pale and so white-based that it just has this brightening effect on your nails. Maybe I would feel differently if my nails were a lot more stained, because then it would kind of emphasize the yellow staining, but for my nails right now, I don't think it looks too bad. It just kind of has this very off-white color to it, which obviously will be more noticeable with the more coats that you do. I definitely think it looks a little bit more of that pastel yellow in 3 coats, but for my full hand swatch, I just did it in the 2. And yeah, similar to the last shade, I kind of have some mixed feelings about this, where I feel like as a jelly, I'm not super in love with it because it is a lot more sheer than I expect jellies to be. It just reads a little bit more like a nail treatment kind of polish, and I know those are also sheer, but I don't know, it's just different levels of sheer, I guess. But at the same time, I'm not too mad with how it actually looks on my nails. Then I have the 2 polishes Danielle sent me. This first one is called Kind of a Big Dill, which is a light dusty green crelly with a subtle green shimmer and gold flakes and a cute little pickle on top. I personally wouldn't call this a crelly formula, but compared to the previous shades, I could see how this is slightly more buildable, almost milky in its base, but I think I would say it's most similar to the very first shade, the strawberry one called Berry Adorable, which also happens to have the same kind of gold shimmer and micro flakes. So I don't know if those are just helping to obscure the visible nail line, but I think looking at the base itself, it does seem to have a little bit more of a blurring property compared to the last 2 shades at least. So I definitely think this is more passable on 2 coats. It also builds up a little bit nicer on the 3 coats where you get more of that crelly kind of finish. But like my other full hand swatches, I just did this in 2 coats, and in direct sunlight, as expected, you are going to see even more visible nail line. I think depending on the lighting, it just might look a bit more obscured like you saw under my desk lighting. While I think the sage green is really pretty, I wish it had a little bit more oomph to the color, which is kind of how I feel about the last couple of shades. The last polish I have is Can You Peel the Love, which is a juicy orange jelly loaded with gold flakes, and this one has a little orange slice on top. It literally looks so juicy. So the formula for this one was really nice. I would say that this felt like the most true jelly, where it's very glassy in its finish while offering a decent pop of color. I know it might just not look super flattering on the first coat because it is very yellow leaning, but it does build up to this beautiful golden orange kind of color in 2 and 3 coats, though again it is incredibly sheer. It's definitely a very glassy kind of jelly finish. So while the color can definitely get more intense, there's not going to be any additional coverage hiding your nail line. I know these little gold flakes and shimmers were in some of the other polishes, but I really loved how it looked in this polish. Like, there's the least amount of contrast because it's the same color as the base essentially, but I just thought it looked so sparkly. So since this one was the most translucent in its base, I figured I could show it as a topper over white and black, as you can see, but I still have it in 2 coats over my first 2 fingers. It definitely works over black, but unfortunately over white you do get that yellowy orange tinge to the color, so I don't think this would work as a topper over light colors. But maybe it just depends on the base that you would use. And lastly, I couldn't help myself and picked up the Mango with the Flow cuticle oil, which has this freshly cut mango on top. Mango is my favorite fruit, so unfortunately I was too weak to resist, but I did like Nailpollies original cuticle oil, so I figured this was a safe bet. I was going to use it up right away. And yeah, this had a nice formula. A little goes a long way, as you can see from my thumb, but it does absorb nicely once you do massage it in. This is made with sunflower oil, jojoba oil, vitamin E, and natural fragrance, which smells so yummy. Again, I might be biased because I just love mango, but it's so good. And here is my full hand swatch collage of the Freshly Picked collection. Definitely such a cute lineup. I love the jelly fruit theme. Overall, I think they look nice, but I definitely would rewear some of them in 3 coats instead of 2. For comparisons, I wanted to start by showing Berry Adorable next to You Mean a Choco-Lot to Me, which is the original cap that is also a strawberry, but very different polishes. For actual comparisons, I first wanted to show You're My Jam, which is another previous Nailpollies that I thought was the closest color-wise to Berry Adorable, being this sort of strawberry pink color in a jelly base with these golden iridescent flakes. But as you can see on the first coat alone, You're My Jam is a lot more pigmented, so this is kind of what I was expecting, at least in terms of coverage for Berry Adorable. We're doing 2 coats, almost makes it look opaque, but it's more crelly if anything. Here's Berry Adorable next to a couple of cracked jellies. We have Strawberry Jam on the left and Tomato on the right. Color-wise, I would say that Tomato is a bit closer, being that sort of reddish orange leaning color, but that one's a lot more vibrant. Neither of these are dupes though. So for some other orangey leaning jellies, I then pulled out Cirque's Sherbet or Fuyu jelly on the left and Jarritos jelly on the right. Seeing these in the bottle, it looks like Sherbet is a lot more pastel in its color, so Jarritos looks closer color-wise, but again, because Berry Adorable is so sheer, on the nail, it actually ends up looking a little bit closer to Sherbet than Jarritos. That one is just a little too saturated and darker looking on the nail. Sherbet isn't an exact match. I would say it is more peachy in its color. There is a slightly more reddish warmth to Berry Adorable in comparison, but since it was so close, I figured I could try to recreate it by doing a layer of Cirque's Nectar on top, since it has that very similar golden shimmer microflake, and it was pretty close. For reference, here is Berry Adorable next to the 2 recent jellies from Holo Gloss and Found on the left and In My Peelings on the right. Again, you can see that Berry Adorable is looking a lot closer to the orangey shades, which isn't what I was expecting from a strawberry jelly. Next, for Blue-tiful Just the Way You Are, I wanted to show this next to Crack's Lavender Chai and Cirque's Lavender Sky, which are obviously 2 lavender jellies, but with slightly different colorings or undertones to them. If you do 1 coat of each, they pretty much are going to look the same. I guess the Cracked is definitely much closer, being slightly cooler toned. I feel like you see a little bit of that orchid purple color in Cirque, but once you do a second coat, the Cracked does have a little bit more of this milky, buildable, crully kind of formula, so it has a little bit more coverage than the Nailpollies. And since Blue-tiful had that color correcting vibe to it, I figured I could show it next to Cirque's Kismet, which is looking a little bit washed out here. It is a very pale color, but it almost looks like gray or white here. There is a drop of lavender in there. And then I have Zoya's Lavender Perfector on the right, which is like a true kind of color corrector versus an actual jelly. So again, doing 1 coat of each, they're all sort of giving nothing, but I can't help but really like these shades. I'm sure some of you know that I really love Kismet as like a neutral, brightening kind of base color, and obviously I have a decent fill line on Zoya's Lavender Perfector, so I feel like this Nailpollies kind of fits in with these more so than actual jellies. And I would say it's much closer to the Cirque, but a little bit brighter. Moving on to Zest in Show, I wanted to show this next to Olive Ave Tend from the recent Seedlings collection. That one is a pale green with more of a crelly cream formula, but they're just both so incredibly light, kind of like off-white shades with a drop of color. The only yellow Nailpollies I have is Taco Chance on Me, which is more of a creamy, crelly kind of formula, but also this butter yellow kind of color, so it's very noticeably yellow. Then for yellow jellies, I have Cirque's Go Away on the left and Dimension Nails Banana Hemp Milk on the right, both of which are these pastel yellow jellies. The Cirque is noticeably much more saturated, so Banana Hemp Milk is definitely the lightest and therefore the closest to Zest in Show. Similar to the previous shades, if you're just doing 1 coat for that subtle wash of color or color correcting vibe, the Dimension Nails looks really similar to the Nailpollies, but then once you do the second coat, you do get a little bit more of that super soft pastel yellow color in Dimension Nails, while Nailpollies leans a little bit more white, or I guess off-white. And I know this is a Nailpollies focus video, but I just wanted to see if layering 1 coat of a milky white over Go Away could recreate the Dimension Nails, and it's kind of close, but not quite. And the last comparison I have is with Cirque Organza, which is one of their sheer neutral kind of shades, but it's obviously very yellow leaning. So I would say this is the closest to a dupe because of how sheer it looks on the nail. They have very similar looks to them because of that yellow sort of coloring, and especially if you're only doing one coat as seen here, they pretty much look the same. But once you do that second coat, they still look very, very close, but Organza is a little bit more yellow and Nailpollies is a little bit more whitened and brightened. Next, for kind of a big deal, the only other light green Nailpollies I have are Matcha Made in Heaven on the left and Mint for Each Other on the right. Color-wise, I'd say Matcha Made in Heaven is closer, being that yellowy green color, but Mint for Each Other does have these flakies, although they are metallic as opposed to that iridescent gold. Some other shades I thought were a bit closer were Crack's Spring Sprout, which unfortunately was recently discontinued, and Crack's Murk, which I believe was from Polish Pickup or Hella Handmade, one of the two. But both of these are very light and very sheer, shimmery kind of green shades. But between the two, I would say Murk is closer because Spring Sprout is a bit more opaque. Murk does have that super sheer base, but it's a bit more gray in its color, and the shimmer is also green instead of gold. So not quite dupes, but definitely similar vibes. And lastly, for Can You Peel the Love, I think the closest Nailpollies I have to this is Flake It Till You Make It, which has a similar golden iridescent kind of shimmer. As you can see, the base is totally different, having more of this beige neutral color. So on the nail, it is incredibly sheer and just looks like a topper, especially on the first coat as seen here. So they're similar, but not dupes. Some other yellowy gold shades I thought were closer included Mooncat's Demeter's Harvest, which I have on the left, and Holo Taco's Boom Toasted on the right. Mooncat is definitely a much lighter shade of yellow with more of a greenish shimmer, and I think the base is also a bit more crelly buildable. So since the Holo Taco is more sheer, it does look a bit closer to the Nailpollies, as you can see here from the first coat alone. The shimmer is also extremely similar, but once you build it up in two coats, again you see more of that orangey yellow color in the Nailpollies. It's definitely more orangey compared to these other two that just lean more yellow gold. And lastly, I have ILNP's Peekaboo from their recent Playground collection on the left, and since the Nailpollies was pulling a bit more orangey, I figured I could also show it next to Sylvanclaw's Sun Haze on the right, but as you can see, that is like a very bright orange. It still is a jelly filled with golden iridescent shimmers and microflakes, but you can just see that orangey warm base even on the first coat alone. So between these two, I would say the ILNP is a bit closer, especially on that first coat, though I'm not sure how many people are going to wear these in one coat, but once you build it up in two coats, the ILNP has more of that true sunshine yellow color. I feel like the Nailpollies is almost an in-between of these two, but it's still a little closer to ILNP. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Nailpollies Freshly Picked collection, or at least the majority of them. I'm pretty sure there's just one nail polish that I'm missing from the collection, and technically there were also two other additional cuticle oils that launched, but I didn't need all of that. So yeah, first off, I want to share some of my thoughts on the rebrand because as you probably know, if you watch my previous Nailpollies review videos, I really, really love them. I'm just such a sucker for any kind of cutesy aesthetic. Even as a full-grown woman, I feel like there shouldn't be anything wrong about that, but I totally understand Danielle not being able to keep up with that. You know, just it's so unsustainable to hand sculpt so many of these caps for her collections. So I completely get being burnt out by that. And it also just made it a little bit harder to get the polishes for a lot of people because they were a little bit more expensive. So with this rebrand, I do appreciate that they went with the normal kind of caps and they just have the little hand sculpted charms on top because it's still very true to, you know, how Nailpollies started, even if they don't have their adorable little faces anymore. I personally think these are still super, super cute. And as you probably noticed too, my caps are colorful, but Danielle did do another sort of like rebrand after coming back with this launch where she is no longer going to be doing painted caps as you see here. They are going to be all white white moving forward, but I'm pretty sure for most of the polishes, you can choose between whether you get a painted cap or just a white one. So these are going to be retailing for $15.50, which is a lot more affordable. They are much more in line with a lot of other boutique brands, which I know comparing them to those other brands maybe isn't the most fair because they obviously are very different when it comes to their polishes. With Nailpollies, you are getting more simple kind of finishes, but it really is more so like the hand sculpted aspect that makes them a little bit more special. But they still are 15 milliliter bottles, really nice paddle brushes, generally nice formulas as well. So they are quality polishes at the end of the day. As I kind of already said throughout my review, overall, I think the polishes themselves were really nice. I like the theming, the colors of them, but I just wish they had a little bit more oomph to them. That obviously could just be a personal preference thing where this spring season, I'm definitely feeling a lot more like vibrant kind of spring shades, and these are more softer like pastels, a little bit more muted, but still very pretty and flattering once they're on the nail. The only one that I still have that kind of like gripe with the color with is very adorable, just because it's not as red as I was expecting it to be. As you saw in my comparison portion, showing it next to some of the reddish pink shades and then next to orange shades, it just skewed a little closer towards orange for almost all of them. But the other colors are pretty much what I expected, especially based off of like the website photos, which I know are also very limited. I think Danielle is really the only one doing swatch photos right now. She does have a couple more now that I checked recently, but as of like the initial launch of these, I was only going off of her photos. And I believe she does have like a soft pink gel overlay on her nails, which is probably what made them look a little bit more full coverage and not as sheer as they ended up being on my nails. But my nails are also like a little bit longer. You know, there's always so many different factors when it comes to jelly polishes and how they can look on people. Ultimately, they are supposed to be sheer. They're not supposed to cover up your visible nail line. And I think I've just kind of realized that with certain jellies, I just kind of prefer a slightly more milky coverage versus being able to like see that stark nail line and then just a little wash of color over it. But it just kind of depends. So I'm just trying to be like as objective as possible, where obviously I was saying that a lot of these are sheer, but jellies are meant to be sheer. And it's just kind of hard to figure out where my preference is, you know, between like what I expect from their coverage and colors and whatnot. So I'm just trying to like cover my bases. As of right now, the only things that are sold out on the website are the two other cuticle oils that I didn't get. The mango one is still available, as well as these other polishes. If you do want to pick any of them up, the good news is that I still am an affiliate with Nailpollies, so you can shop them through the link in my description box and use my code PolishedYogi10 to save $10 off your order of $45 or more. As always, a big thank you to all of you who do support me through that. But even if you don't plan on picking anything up, I still would love to hear your thoughts on Nailpollies as a brand, if you've tried them before, what you think of the rebrand. If you already picked up some of these polishes, let me know any and all thoughts you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!